Hi, my name is Lorelai Maynard, and today I'm going to be reading Chapter 8 of the Geneva Project book Truth by Christina Benjamin. Tippy! I bolted upright. I just heard someone calling me. Had I fallen asleep? I looked around the room. All was dark and still. The only sounds I heard were the steady breathing of other orphans. I hung my legs off the side of the bed and they swung, still inches from the floor. I craned my neck towards the large straw bed to my right, where all the Janes lay huddled together under their threadbare tan blankets. They all seemed much more comfortable without me taking up another space in the communal bed. The scene to my left was the same. All the Johns slumbered undisturbed in their bed. I could see my shadow cast eerily on the floor from the moonlight shining in the window behind me. The angle made me appear tall and long. It made me smile for a moment, getting lost in the idea that I would one day grow out of the short, slight frame I inherited. Tippy! There it was again. This time I knew it was Nova. No one ever called me Tippy but him. This had to be the signal, but how was he calling me without waking the others? It was almost as though his voice was inside my head. I scanned the room for movement one more time, but no one stirred. I pulled my legs back onto the cot bed and folded them underneath me until I was crouched in sort of a kneeling position, facing the window. I slowly pushed on the bottom pane of glass as I had done this morning. At first nothing happened, and I began to panic. I tried again with more pressure, and this time the pane swung out so suddenly that the top half of my body went with it. I found myself dangling from the waist out of the window, with the pane resting lazily on my lower back. I began to wiggle my hips back and forth until I gained enough momentum to slither the rest of my body out the window as silently as possible. I landed unceremoniously on the sand below. Graceful 65. All the sounds of buzzing nightlife around me had stopped the instant I thudded to the ground. The silence was unbearable. I sat for a while until the insects picked up their songs again. Then I stood up, brushing sand off me and smoothing my hair. I guess bathing was unnecessary after all. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness so I could get my bearings. It appeared I was behind some foliage right outside the Trojan Center. I gingerly pushed through it to the clearing ahead. The plants were thickly woven together and they resisted my progress, roots tripping me along the way. As I neared the edge, I paused to look around. To my right, I could see the sparkling lights of Lux in the distance. To my left, I could see the entrance to the courtyard. There weren't any glyphs posted there as there should be. This worried me, because maybe that meant they had heard me and were coming to look for me. This thought dropped me into a crouch among the bushes. Tippy, come on! There was Nova's voice again. Where the heck was he? It irritated me immensely because his voice kept startling me and interrupting my thoughts and conversations I was having with myself. Well, now or never, I guess. Nova said to trust me, so here goes nothing. I stood and broke free from the shelter of plant life and darted straight ahead at a full sprint. I had gone a good distance when I realized I didn't know where I was going. I stopped and knelt down, suddenly feeling overexposed being out in the open like this. I looked over my shoulder at the dim light coming from the Trojan Center. All was still. I stood again looking towards the inky blackness of the thick forest ahead of me and slowly started making my way towards it. All of my senses seemed to be straining to overcompensate for my lack of vision. I heard the crunch of each footstep I had placed and smelled the thick, earthy scent of the forest approaching. I didn't know why I was walking towards the forest, since Nova had neglected to tell me where to meet him, but something was pulling me this way. It was as if a magnetic force had grabbed a hold of me and was guiding my steps. As I reached the edge of the forest, I felt all my senses tingling. I was nervous and excited all at once. The damp soil of the forest and heavy perfume of tropical plants were intoxicating. The smell reminded me of Nova, and like that, he was by my side. Nova, I squealed, half startled, half relieved. You made it! Great work! Come on, we have a lot to do, he said and grabbed my hand and started forward. Wait, what are we doing out here? I whispered nervously as I pulled against him. I thought you wanted answers, Tippy. I do. Okay then, let's go. Your answers await. I could see his white teeth gleaming as he smiled at me and pulled me onward. As usual, he melted away my inhibitions with his charm. We walked a little ways deeper into the forest, and soon I felt that we had been swallowed by the night. It was so dark that I couldn't even see the hand in front of my face. Not even the moonlight could make its way into the thick forest. Just as I was about to protest that we go any further for fear we would never make it back out, I saw a little burst of light. At first it was large, and then it shrunk to the size of an egg and danced in front of Nova. I climbed to his side, not sure of what to do. As I looked closer, I saw that the dancing yellow light was a flame floating directly above Nova's open palm. "What the? Pretty cool, huh?" he said happily. My eyes grew wide, and heart started pounding louder as I stared in bewilderment at what I was seeing. Was this some kind of magic trick? "How do you do that?" I whispered nervously. "This is what I was trying to tell you, Tippy. I'm special, just like you." "What?" "I knew you'd never believe me if I just told you what I could do, so I figured I'd show you. That's what tonight's all about." I took a step closer to the ball of light bouncing steadily above his hand. It was amazing. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Everything in me was telling me to be afraid, but I couldn't help myself. I was so drawn to Nova and his flame. I wanted to know all about it, and I wanted to be able to do it myself. I circled around his hand with my eyes transfixed upon the flame. I wanted to reach out and touch it, but something held me back. I was trembling inside at the idea of it. As if he was reading my mind, he said, "You can touch it. It won't hurt you." Startled, I froze and looked up at him. "Nova, how do you do that? How do you do that? You always know what I'm thinking." "Oh, that? Haha, well, I can do that too." I paused for a second to focus on Nova's face. It was illuminated in such a way that it took my breath away for a moment. The light bathed his hand face, enough for me to see the bright sparkle of his green eyes and the joy that radiated over him as he looked at me. His smile was dazzling and white, and his dimples were in rare form. It had to hurt to smile that big, I thought, as I stared at him. Then I shook myself from the Nova-induced spell that he always seemed to cast on me. I was so confused. I didn't know if I was happy or sad to learn these things. Wait, was he listening to my thoughts right now? "You can hear what people are thinking?" I asked consciously. "Yes, I know it is weird, but I've always been this way. Ever since I was little, I thought it was normal, and everyone could do it. I've never shared this with anyone else, Tippy." "Why me?" I asked. "Because I trust you. You're different. You're like me." "Why do you keep saying that? I can't do this," I said, pointing to his outstretched hand. "I can't make fire or hear what people are thinking." "I have a feeling you can do a lot more than you think you can." He smiled. He set off again, and I was forced to follow him or be swallowed up by the trail of darkness. He stopped shortly and sat on a fallen palm tree, patting the trunk for me to sit next to him. "You try it now." "What?" "Just do whatever you did when you were with Gemma," he encouraged. "I keep telling you. I didn't do anything when I was with her." "Well, you definitely did something. Maybe you just don't know how. That's what we have to figure out. That's why we came out here. We can practice until you figure it out." For the first time since I had joined Nova, I started to feel that heavy thing creep back into my chest. What if the only reason Nova wanted to be my friend was because he thought I had powers like him? Once he figured out I didn't, would he not want to be my friend anymore? I began to feel panicky, like the air was being sucked from my lungs. I broke out in little beads of sweat along my hairline. I wiped at them with the back of my hand. "Tippy, it's okay. I know you can do this. Even if you don't, just believe in it." Then he went again, getting inside my head. I was going to have to remember to guard my thoughts more carefully when I was around him. "Here, why don't you try this?" he said. He grabbed my hand and dumped the bright little orb into my palm. The instant it touched my hand, it went out, and we were once again bathed in darkness until Nova sparked another magical flame. My mind was reeling. I've learned so much tonight, but was more confused than ever. Nova had magical powers. He's convinced that I do too, and who knows, maybe I do, but my trial run wasn't going so well. "You have to believe in yourself, Tippy. Let's try again. And don't be scared this time." I held out my right hand, palm up and open, and steadied it with my left hand underneath. This time it stayed lit, but as soon as I felt the tingling sensation take hold of my hand, I panicked and pulled them to my sides, dumping the little flame, which extinguished when it hit the mossy ground. I let out a deep sigh. "I'm no good at this. Let's just go back, okay? I've had enough," I whined. "No, Tippy, come on, concentrate. I know you can do this." "Nova, I can't." "Okay, calm down. We need to think about this. Maybe you need to be in the right frame of mind to be able to do it. I've had years of practice, so it just comes naturally to me. But you need to take your time and figure out your triggers." "Triggers?" "Yes, that's how you tap into your power. It's usually tied to emotions or nature." I just stared at him wide-eyed. It was like he was speaking another language, and he might as well have been, because I hadn't the first clue what my trigger was or how to find out, since I had never done anything magic before. Well, except for when I hit Gemma, apparently. Gemma, that's it, he said. Oh, you gotta stop doing that. I don't like you reading my mind. Sorry, bad habit, he smiled, but I'll try harder to stay out of your head, promise. So you think Gemma's my trigger, I asked. Maybe. That's the first time you did anything magical, right? Yeah, I guess. But what are we going to do? Gemma's not exactly my biggest fan. She's not going to help me figure out if I have powers. Let me think, Nova said. Oh, sorry. Pacing back and forth silently on the damp forest floor. I sat on the log, tapping my foot impatiently. It figured that Gemma would be standing in my way of something great. She never could stand me. What did I ever do that was so awful to make her hate me so much? Ugh, I'm not going to let her take this from me. Whatever those so-called powers were, I wanted them. I stood up and paced around with Nova too. It felt more productive than sitting, at least. I stopped by a tree and gave it a hard kick to release some of my frustration. Nova's light suddenly brightened. We both turned to look at each other. What was that? I asked. I think it was you. What were you just doing? Nova demanded. Walking around thinking how much I hate Gemma, and then I took my anger out on this poor tree, I said, patting its trunk regretfully. Sorry, that's it. It's your anger towards Gemma, he said excitedly. Come here, let's try it again. This time think about Gemma and how much you can't stand her. Okay, I'll try, I said, sounding a bit unconvinced. I raised my hands again, palms open and cupped together this time. It was as if Nova was passing me a fragile insect, considering the delicacy he used, transferring the flame to me this time. It touched my palms, and he continued to support me by placing his hands underneath mine. The light danced and flickered, but it didn't go out. I concentrated hard on staying still, although I could feel the powerful sensation of the flame tingling on my arms. Nova and I stood there with our arms outstretched towards each other, cupping the licking flames. I'm going to let go now, Tippy. Keep concentrating, Nova said. He slowly pulled his hands away from mine and took a step back into the shadows. I felt the flame start to dull, but I was determined not to lose it, so I dug deep into my memories of all the horrible things Gemma had done to me over the years. That seemed to work because the flame strengthened. It was like a fire had been ignited inside of me. I felt hot and powerful, like my whole body was glowing. I smiled and whispered to Nova without taking my eyes off the flame. I'm doing it. I must have broken my concentration as I whispered to Nova, because just then it began to dull, and then I heard it, the voice in my head again. Gemma, Gemma, Gemma. It made me jump, and I lost the flame completely. It was swallowed into the heavy cloak of blackness that dwelled in the forest. I was frozen in my place and wanted to call out to Nova, but I had lost sight of him before the flame went out, and I was scared of the voice I just heard in my head. What if it was coming for me and Nova? Light! Oh, thank God. I gasped and ran towards Nova. Okay. Wrapping my arms around him, I was out of breath and shaking. Tippy, it's okay. You did great. What's wrong? Nova asked as I clung to him. That voice, did you hear it too? It was shouting in my head, and it's not the first time I've heard it. I think that it's what let me out here tonight. I think we might be in danger, Nova. Tippy, don't be mad, okay? You have nothing to be afraid of. What do you mean? Why should I be mad? It was me that you were hearing in your head. Just now I was trying to help you concentrate on Gemma. It's earlier how I told you it was time to meet me. It's another power I have. What? Not only can you read minds, you can control thoughts? What are you? What do you really want with me? I was shouting now and backing away from him. I felt overwhelmed and angry. I knew I was different. I had always been the outcast, the one with no friends or family. Why did he have to point that out? Why did he have to take advantage of me too? Tippy, stop it. You have me. You're not alone now, he said, coming closer to me. And you're not an outcast. You're special. Look what you can do. His words shook me and instantly brought tears to my eyes. Nova softly drooped his arm over my shoulder, and I began to cry. He knew so much about me. It wasn't fair. I barely knew anything about him. Everything about him was mysterious. The fact that he knew his name, the secret hiding spot he had in the courtyard, the mysterious punch he saw me give to Gemma, the way he unlocked the window in my room, the magic flame, the mind reading, the way I hear his voice in my head. Suddenly I stiffened. Nova was so open about his other powers, but he didn't say anything about being able to talk to me in my mind, only that he could read minds. What if he could implant thoughts? Was any of this real, or was he just manipulating me? Was this all a trick to get me out here? I was suddenly frightened of him. I was alone in the forest with a boy I barely knew, and he had strange powers. How had I been so stupid? Well, if he did have other plans for me, I wasn't going to make it easy on him. I ducked from under his arm and took off running aimlessly into the forest. "Tippy," he shouted after me, "stop! It's not like that, I swear. You have to trust me." Even though I'm an excellent runner, I didn't make it very far before Nova caught up to me. I couldn't see where I was going, and I kept stumbling, and I eventually slammed my shin into something solid and fell down completely. Nova had no problem finding me with his handy little firelight. I felt so cornered and vulnerable as he approached. I was breathing heavy when he stopped at my feet. He stood looking down at me for a moment and then just decided to sit on the large stump next to me. It must have been the source of the throbbing pain in my shin. I scrambled to a standing position and stared at him. Why was he just sitting there? "What are you?" I shouted at him. "Why did you bring me here?" He just sat there staring at his feet. This infuriated me. My fear was suddenly gone, replaced by anger, fueled by my need for survival. "I don't know what your problem is, but I'm not a freak like you, and I don't want you in my head anymore. Got it? Just leave me alone." "Tippy, I'm sorry. I understand how you're feeling, but I'm only trying to help you. I promise." "You may be able to hear my thoughts, but you don't know how I feel. I feel betrayed. I trusted you, and this whole time you were just messing around in my head. I don't even know what to believe anymore. Tippy, I promise I never mess with your head. I only talk to you. I don't make you do things." "Yeah, right, like I'm supposed to believe the mind bender." I turned away from him and started to stomp off again, but he reached for me. As soon as I felt him touch my skin, I whirled around like a wild animal and lunged for him. "Don't touch me," I screamed as I swung out with both fists. I hit him square in the chest with my left hand, but as I swung again with my right, he blocked me with his flame-wielding hand. Before I knew it, I was on fire. There was a burst of flames as soon as our hands connected, and then the fire raced down my right arm and raced across my back. I could feel the heat, and I closed my eyes in panic and screamed. As the sound escaped my mouth, something incredible happened. The flames transformed into a glowing light beam that shot straight up from my body into the night sky. The whole forest awoke with a burst of light radiating from me. Suddenly, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I felt strong and powerful and light and fearless. I stretched my right arm out in front of me and brought my left hand to join it. The light spread down my arms to both hands, and I separated them shoulder width apart. The light continued in a beaming arc that was connected to both my hands. I laughed at the strangeness of the whole experience as the light grew brighter still. It sprang to life, leaving my hands and encircling me. I threw my head back in hysterical laughter. How was this happening to me? Had Nova been right all along? Was I special? Was I like him? I shifted my focus to him, looking left and right to try to find him. All I saw around me was my halo of white light, breathing a glowing life into the dark forest around me. Suddenly I realized I was no longer on the ground. I was hovering. "Oh my God," I gasped. "You're okay, Tippy. Stay calm," came Noah's steady voice. Following the sound of his voice, I looked down to see him about 10 feet below me. "What do I do?" I shouted. "Just stay calm and concentrate on coming towards me." I locked eyes on him and heard him whispering in my mind, "It's okay. You're okay. I'm right here." I focused on his face and his calm, steady voice in my head. I could see his face coming closer. It was getting clearer. I honed in on each of his exquisite features. His golden blonde hair seemed to glow in the light I was casting. His deep green eyes sparkled as the light picked up flecks of gold in them. His sharply chiseled jaw and angular cheekbones were highlighted as the light danced across the bronzed skin of his face, and his full lips turned down and pressed together in concentration and genuine worry for me. That's when I first realized that Nova truly cared about me and that I should trust him. He drew closer and closer to me, and before I knew it, his arms were encircling me, holding me safely against his chest as it heaved up and down heavily. For the first time, I realized that Nova must have been scared too. Even though his voice was strong and calm, he must have been just as frightened as I was. I looked up at him, and the relief was radiating in his smile. I hadn't realized my feet were on the ground until that moment. I still felt like I was floating while in Nova's embrace. We both just stared at each other for a moment, and then we laughed until we collapsed. Well, this was kind of nice," said Nova between fits of laughter. "I'll say," I gasped. "I told you could do it," he boasted. Okay, you were right, but I think I'm done for tonight." "I agree. You scared me for a little bit there." Me? You scared me. I thought you were turning my brain into mush or something." "I know, I'm sorry about all that. I've never shared these secrets with anyone, and I guess I didn't think how you might react. I'm sorry, Tippy," he said, sounding downtrodden again. I scooted close to him and grabbed his left hand, gently scooping out the little flame he was controlling. "All is forgiven," I said, and resting my hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry I called you a freak. I guess we're both freaks, huh?" Nova smiled and shrugged. I like the sound of that. We sat like this for a while, turning the light back and forth with each other. In Nova's hand, it was a flickering flame, and in my hand, it transformed into a white orb. The beauty of it was mesmerized us. Each seemed a fitting representation of us. Nova's flame was bright, bold, and fiery, and my orb was ever-changing and seemed a bit unstable. For the first time tonight, I started to feel more like myself than ever before. I couldn't explain the feeling of ease and contentment I felt playing with this magical source of light on the damp forest floor with Nova. It was like the feeling of finally coming home, even though I had no recollection of my actual home. This feeling gave me strength, courage, and peace, like I was doing the right thing, and it gave me trust in Nova, like I had never had for another person before. I felt like our souls were meshed together like the flickering flames before us, and that he would always be a part of me. Nova gave me a reassuring sigh of contentment. I guess he was feeling the same way, or perhaps reading my thoughts. I turned to look at him and said, "Can you tell me everything about you? I don't want any more surprises, and I won't overreact, no matter what you tell me. I promise. I just want to know you." He smiled at me, reached out his empty hand, pulling us to our feet. "Nothing would make me happier, Tippy," he murmured. "But there's a lot to tell, and we'd better be heading back. I think your light show woke up the whole forest. We're going to have to go deeper next time. You're a lot more powerful than I ever imagined." I beamed at his praise of my powers. I followed Nova, brushing the mossy forest floor off my legs as I walked. I let Nova light my way and held his hand to keep on the trail. As we walked, Nova started to tell me about his life. He had grown up in a small village on the edge of the rainforest called Leon. As farmers, his family worked alongside the Beto people to learn the best ways to farm the land. They had a great relationship with the tribe, and Nova remembered playing in fields with his little sister Ivy and their friends from the forest while their fathers worked. When the flood came, his father brought him, his sister, and their mother into the forest to find higher ground, but they never made it. When they entered the forest, it had already begun burning from the lava. Nova's father told him to climb a nearby tree and not to stop until he reached the top. That's the last he saw of his family. He thought they were climbing the tree as well, but when the storm was finally over and he could cling to the tree no longer, he slid to the ground to find out he was completely alone. Okay. Still recording. He slid to the ground to find out he was completely alone. At first he thought that they might have climbed other trees nearby, so that he searched and soon realized that the trees held nothing for him. He wandered aimlessly around the forest until he was eventually found by the Griffs and brought to the Trojan Center. "And you know the rest," he said. I pondered this for a moment. I still had so many questions. "When did you find out you had powers?" I asked. "I think it first started right after the flood. After I couldn't find my parents, I was so alone and no one to talk to in the forest. So I did a lot of thinking in my head, and I remember I kept thinking, 'Please find me, I'm right here, and that's when the Griffs found me. They said I was calling him, but I knew I haven't never uttered a word. Then back at the center, I figured out that I could hear what people were thinking. Like when one of the orphans were scared, I'd be able to tell and comfort them, as if one of the teachers, if one of the teachers were in a particularly foul mood, I know why and how to cheer them up, or if I should just steer clear of them altogether. It's like a sixth sense, I guess. We can all read people's feelings. I'm just really in tune with them, and I think that helps me hear their thoughts." "And what about the whole mind-bending thing, where you can get inside people's heads?" "Well, that happened by accident at first, like in the forest when I was begging someone to find me. I guess my thoughts were so strong they were able to enter the minds of Griffs. But I would find myself thinking things in my head, and someone near me would start responding, like they thought they were having a conversation. I tested my theory out on a few innocent Griffs. It was harmless fun, really, like sending them into Greeley's office when she hadn't called them, or telling them to walk in circles. You know, pranks and stuff. Soon I realized it was a pretty powerful tool, though, and I decided I didn't want to use it unless I had to. Like to tell me when to meet you? Yes, and other times, like having Miss Bria set up the cot bed in your room and having it positioned right under the window, and also telling them that they had to use and telling one of the Griffs to clean the window and leave it unlocked. Also telling them that they had to use the Jaws room at the precise moment you were escaping from your room. You used it to make everyone think Gemma and I had just fallen off the rubber pile too, didn't you? That's why we didn't end up in the locker. Nova just smiled and shrugged, but I caught his wink. Wow, that really is handy. Do you think I have that power? I don't know, Tippy. One step at a time, okay? Okay, I sighed. So what about your little flame here? I said, pointing to the firelight dancing in his hand. Well, that has been the best part of the whole thing, and that's what led me to you. What do you mean? I asked. Well, as you know, I've spent my fair share of time in the locker. I nodded for him to continue, because everyone knew Nova had a fixture of the locker. Yet he always seemed to return unshaken, unlike the rest of us. I was dying to know his secret. Well, the first time Grilly sent me there, I tried to get into her mind and tell me she didn't want to send me there, but it didn't work. I was so confused, sat in the dark just stewing about how I'm not being able to get into her mind, and I just kept thinking that I just needed light, and then bam, there was a light hovering over me. I reached out and touched it, and it dropped into the palm of my hand, and since then on, all I had to do is get into my own mind and tell it that I need light, and voila, he said with a snap of his fingers as the light disappeared and then reappeared with a second snap. That's so cool. I can't wait until I can control it like you, I squealed. Patience, Tippy. There's still more to the story. Oh yeah, like how the light told you to find me. Exactly. When you have light in the locker, it's quite an interesting place. It's not scary. In fact, it's rather exciting. All the walls are filled with the history of our island and the legend of Lux. The legend of Lux. The legend of Lux? I never heard of that, I said skeptically. I think that's the way they want it. They want us to keep us in the dark, literally and figuratively. I don't think they even know that the legend is down there or on the walls, or they wouldn't chance putting us down there, especially not you. Why me? I asked. Well, he stopped walking and turned to me, because I think the legend is about you, he said. I stood there stunned. Normally I would think he was joking, but after tonight, I was beginning to believe anything was possible. I had powers after all, so why couldn't I have a legend? Why do you think it's about me? I asked consciously. Tippy, I still have so much more to tell you, but not tonight. We started out much later than I anticipated, and we've got to get back to the center. I looked around and realized we were at the edge of the field where we had entered the forest earlier in the night. The inky black sky was starting to show signs of brightening, and as it became washed with a glowing deep-sea color. It would be dawn soon. Everyone in the center would be rising, and I didn't even want to think about what would happen if they found us missing. That had never happened before that I knew of, and I wasn't about to find out what the punishment for such actions would be. Okay, what's the plan? I said so matter-of-factly that Nova chuckled. We go back the way we came. I'll help you sneak back into your room through the window, and we'll meet at the same time, same place tomorrow. I hated the idea of having to go a whole day to wait to be with Nova again. I wanted to learn more. I wanted him to finish his story and tell me about the legend and teach me more powers. I felt like a sponge had replaced my brain, and it was wrung dry and so thirsty to soak up all the new information about my new life. I felt like from today forwards my life was truly starting, if only I knew how right I was. Once Nova was sure the coast was clear, we sprinted across the open fields to the Trojan Center and scurried through the bushes in front of my window. Nova pulled open the window pane from the bottom, and before I had a chance to say a word, he kissed me on top of my head and pushed me through. I landed on my cot bed with a thud. I froze, fearing someone had seen me enter the room, but as I scoped out the scene, everything seemed just as it was when I left. I let out a breath of relief and slowly removed my shoes and slipped under the covers, falling instantly asleep. That's all for today, but make sure to stay tuned for Chapter 9.